The manhwa opens on a stark, snowy mountain range, setting the stage for chaos. A group of armed men corner Zeke, the protagonist, who they call a fool for thinking he could escape their flawless encirclement. Their leader demands to know the whereabouts of the ancient relic. Zeke, missing both arms and yet inexplicably cheerful, laughs in their faces. Idiots, he calls them, mockingly asking if they truly believed he would talk. This provokes the group, but one man, the voice of reason in a gang of hotheads, urges restraint. He suggests contacting the main squad via their crystal communicator and reports that they have captured the so-called Northern Phantom. Meanwhile, the men speculate about Zeke's unrelenting determination. One marvels at how he's still alive and questions his obsession with the same relic sought by the Emperor. Another grumbles about the trouble Zeke has caused them and suggests they should have some fun torturing him before handing him over to the main squad. They decide to flip a coin to determine who gets to start. As the coin spins mid-air, Zeke takes advantage of their distraction. In a horrifyingly grotesque display, he bites into one of his severed arms and forcibly reattaches it, declaring that he refuses to die without putting up a fight. The men gape at him in shock, and the scene pauses for a dramatic reveal. Zeke Draper, the failed firstborn of the illustrious Draper household. He reflects bitterly on his past, a lineage blessed with the ability to wield aura and awaken his knights, except for him, the so-called trash. Cast out by his family, Zeke vowed to survive, no matter the cost. As the coin lands, the man designated to start the torture doesn't even have time to celebrate. Zeke has already decapitated him in a single, swift motion. Strength is all that matters. He then turns to the next man, shatters his sword and slices him down the chest, driving home his point. The weak exist only to be crushed and robbed by the strong. With both arms now reattached, Zeke acknowledges the futility of his situation. The men, panicked, dub him a gross irregular and speculate that perhaps decapitating him might work. But Zeke, undeterred, charges into the group. Despite their coordinated sword formation, the scene cuts to reveal Zeke standing victorious, surrounded by a sea of corpses. Yet this triumph comes at a cost. Countless swords are embedded in his back, and he coughs up blood, accepting his impending death. Clutching the relic, a dragon statue carved from a gemstone, Zeke laments his failure to exact true revenge, but consoles himself with having stolen the Emperor's prize. His blood drips onto the relic, releasing a radiant golden aura. A status window materializes, proclaiming his strong will and offering to awaken an ancient power. As Zeke teeters on the brink of death, a mysterious robed figure appears, asking if he agrees to the pact. Zeke, more annoyed than intrigued, mutters a begrudging yes just to silence the voice. The system acknowledges his consent, initiating an irreversible activation sequence. Young Zeke liked to tell the tale of how he ended up looking like a confused knight. After waking up, he found himself staring at his reflection in disbelief. "I can't believe I time traveled," he said, still feeling like swords were stuck in him from a bad dream. He wandered around, realizing he was back at the cradle, the Draker household's fancy trading center, also known as the Dragonslayer. The Draker family boasted being one of the 3 legendary transcendent families, founded by Tarkin Draper. Tarkin was the hero who supposedly saved the continent by slaying the evil dragon Hamad 1,000 years ago. Maybe it was their dragon-slaying blood, but every Draper had a magical aura that made becoming knights a breeze. Except for poor Zeke. Just then, a flashy status window popped up, announcing the admin system was restarting. Zeke jumped out of bed, groaning about another system update. The window continued, saying that the Awakener's soul was confirmed and being aligned. After receiving the Elder's will, Zeke had been given some sort of authority over part of the system. "Great," he muttered, as more screens bombarded him. He laughed at the over-the-top magical visuals, wondering if his artifact was causing the glitch. Nope, it was just a basic status window showing he was now a healer, a rare class. And there was a draconian skill that needed 10 points to unlock. Because why keep it simple? Zeke quickly pushed his hand through the bright screen. He said it was just like those magic videos and that he could use it the same way. Simple enough, he thought. As he got closer, he wondered what class skill meant, since it was written in Draconic, a language no one used anymore. His master had told him that long ago. People chose classes based on what they were good at. Each class had special moves called skills. Since Zeke was a healer, he could use healing skills. Nice, right? Zeke remembered how after knowing he was a healer, his master trained him until he almost died. But his status window said he was now a healer. Deciding to try it, he saw a bright light form in his hand. He thought about when he became a healer in his past life, his 20s. Right after unlocking the Aether Hall, he closed his eyes and focused as a purple mist surrounded him. After a moment, he opened his eyes. "Got it. My Aether Hall is unlocked," he said. Even though his trained body was gone, he was back in the past with all his skills and memories. Not bad compared to before. Just as he was about to explore his new abilities, someone knocked on the door. "Can I come in?" a voice demanded. Zeke was startled and wondered how to turn off the status window since he hadn't looked at it yet. The door opened without waiting. "I can't believe you're not ready," said Decker, Zeke's servant. "Ready for what?" Zeke asked, noticing Decker couldn't see the status window. Decker looked serious. "Seriously, where are we going?" he asked. Zeke remembered being scared of Decker when he was younger. Even though he was 32 now, the fear was still there. Suddenly, the status window appeared again. Activating class skill, Composed Mind. Zeke felt calm instantly. "My nervousness is gone," he said. The skill worked exactly as it said. Decker wasn't happy. "I've told you many times this is important. Are you even listening?" Zeke nodded, but his mind flashed back to a messy scene. Blood on the floor. "Oh, we're talking about the Pancratian test," he sighed. Zeke explained that all Drakers go through training called the Cradle, starting at age 7. For 5 years, they had strict training. Each year, teachers watch them in sword fates and no-rules Pancratian matches. "Teachers usually pick who fights whom," Zeke continued. "But sometimes students choose if both agree. No rules mean people get hurt or worse, but these fights decide our classes, so we had to give our all." Claire nodded. Their teacher announced, "Today is Pancratian Day. This is the final test." The students cheered, "Yes, sir." They were all excited. Panmark, the head teacher, said, "Since you're ready, let's start." Again, the students said, "Yes, sir." But some were looking at Zeke, remembering how embarrassed he was last year. "How is he still in the main family?" they whispered. Zeke could hear them all. Panmark called 2 students, Aaron and Goda, to fight. They faced each other, and Panmark signaled them to begin. Aaron threw a punch first, but Goda smirked and kicked him in the chin. Classic rivalry with high stakes. Zeke yawned and said, "The fight's over already. That's what happens when you don't defend properly." Aaron won, and Zeke added, "I used to be scared of this as a kid, but these guys are nothing." A student across the bleachers saw Zeke yawning. He laughed and cracked his knuckles. Finally, it was Zeke's turn. Panmark asked him and his opponent Leon if they were ready. Leon, the guy who had been watching him, said, "I can't believe you're back here again. Didn't get enough of my attention last year?" Zeke said he didn't care and started to remember the last Pancratian when he saw himself bleeding because Leon had beaten him. He thought that Leon had been his opponent every year and probably cheated behind the scenes. He never complained because his family believed he had to overcome dirty tricks to become a true dragon slayer. He wondered why such a trashy person had to be his cousin. In his past life, the 4 siblings of the direct bloodline never met, and there were over a dozen cousins who were happy to bully him. Leon said he had to give Zeke credit for being brave to come back after what happened last time. Or maybe Leon just hadn't learned his lesson because he's so stupid. Zeke's composed mind skill activated, and he said it had been a while since he heard such childish insults. He told Leon he wouldn't be nice if he called him that again. Leon asked what Zeke was going to do, putting his hand on his head and calling him an inferior piece of shit. Immediately, Leon was sent flying from Zeke's punch as he activated a skill called Critical Strike. The window warned him that if he didn't land the hit, he could be countered. Leon started screaming about his face while holding it, while Zeke looked down at his hand, saying he only meant to knock him out, but the skill got activated when he punched as usual. His Aether Hall enveloped his hand. Panmark immediately asked him what he was doing, saying he attacked before announcing the start. Zeke sighed, asking who waits for that on the battlefield, and that those who hit first have the advantage, while smiling menacingly. Panmark immediately got cold sweats, wondering what kind of bloodlust that was. Leon said he was fine, but Panmark didn't know for sure because when he looked down, Leon was pulling blood onto the floor. He told Zeke to continue with the fight, saying he was going to make sure that Trash knew his place. Zeke saw Leon bleeding from the nose. "What a crybaby," Zeke said. thinking Leon was too stupid to learn his lesson. Panmark told him to get ready and waved his hand, telling him to begin. Leon started to dash in and began to ignore the attacks, saying that at first he was scared because of the initial punch, but his fists didn't hurt at all. If Leon just guarded, he was no threat. What Zeke had to watch out for was Leon's left-hand counter. As Zeke came in with it, Leon ducked underneath, grabbed his inner knee and back, and said it was too obvious. But Leon felt a little pressure in the face and cooled off a little. Then Leon started to topple Zeke over, saying he was about to teach him his lesson. But Leon took a devastating blow. Panmark wondered what he just saw as Leon was shaking badly. He looked at Zeke on the floor, speechless, saying there was no way. He thought that the combat IQ of this kid was insane. When Leon dodged the counterattack and tried to take him down, however, Zeke immediately kneed Leon's chin and got out of his grasp. That's on Leon for letting his guard down, thinking he had it. But Zeke keeping his composure was crazy. Panmark wondered if this was really the same Zeke Draker that everybody else knew. Leon started getting a gut-wrenching feeling, wondering why he was unable to do anything. He said he needed to create distance before he could even backpedal. Zeke came in with a thigh kick. As Leon started to lose his balance, but Leon managed to stomp his foot, keeping himself upright, and started to come in with a punch. Meanwhile, Zeke was happy he was able to control his strength this time, and another skill activated called Heightened Senses, which did exactly what it sounded like. As Leon's punch came close, Zeke saw it in slow motion and dodged it. He said this was a familiar feeling, and now that he was used to controlling his ether, it was like he was weaving around Leon's hand. Zeke immediately prepared for a throw, slamming Leon straight into the ground, using his own momentum against him, shattering the arena. Panmark and the other students stood in disbelief, wondering what had just happened. But Zeke continued by using another skill called Precise Stab, elbowing Leon in the chest. It cracked Leon's sternum, causing critical damage. Zeke then raised his hand, saying that even an idiot like Leon needed to learn his lesson, as he started to imbue aura into it. Leon faintly got the word stop, but Zeke didn't listen. He hit Leon in the face over and over as everyone watched in fear. Finally, Zeke stood up with blood on his hands and Leon's. He told them that this was the consequence of messing around and finding out. Then he said his head felt better now that he had sweated a bit, and he could recognize some of the people there. He told them to stop just staring and to come down if they had something to say to him. One of the students stands up laughing and declares that he chooses Zeke as his opponent because he has something to settle with him. Zeke quickly recognizes him as Jackin Verdick, another one of his cousins. Accepting the challenge, Zeke adds a twist, calling out Jackin's servant, Liam Stone, to join the fight as well, saying it would make things fair. Jackin, insulted by this, snaps back, but Zeke mocks him, calling him a dumbass. Jackin grows furious, and both he and Liam step onto the stage. Before the fight begins, Panmark, the instructor, warns Zeke not to make a move until he gives the signal. Zeke, smiling confidently, finds it amusing to face Jackin and Liam, knowing how significant Liam will become in the future. He recalls that Liam, once Jackin's servant, went on to rise through the chaos of war, becoming the legendary mercenary king by uniting the strongest mercenary groups under his leadership. When Panmark finally signals the start, Jackin launches a surprise attack, but Zeke easily catches his fist mid-air. Zeke taunts him, saying he should have listened and attacked together with Liam. Furious, Jackin tries an overhead kick, but feels immediate pain in his leg as Zeke blocks it with ease. Zeke mocks him again, noting he should have paid attention before attacking. Taking advantage of Jackin's moment of distraction, Zeke charges forward. He imbues his fists with aura and lands a series of calculated attacks, exploiting Jackin's injured leg. Zeke lands a low kick and follows it up with a punch that sends Jackin sprawling to the ground, coughing up blood. Jackin, defeated and humiliated, yells for Liam to take over and kill this asshole. Liam finally steps forward, taking his hands out of his pockets. Zeke, noticing Liam's massive build, wonders how a 12-year-old could possibly look so intimidating. He realizes Liam's reach will be a major challenge and decides not to let him take the lead. Zeke charges in, using his aura to increase his speed, and launches a series of rapid jabs, aiming to disorient Liam. The two move across the arena in a blur of motion. Zeke employs a skill called Slash, sending a barrage of attacks to confuse Liam's sight. The students watching are in disbelief, awestruck by Zeke's performance, as this type of northern fist-fighting technique is almost unheard of in the Midlands, where swordsmanship dominates. Even Panmark is surprised, questioning how Zeke knows such advanced techniques. Despite Zeke's impressive display, his body begins to give out. His hands bleed from the relentless attacks, and he struggles to keep up due to his weak physical condition. Meanwhile, Liam remains unshaken, tanking every hit without dodging or counterattacking, and wonders why he's holding back now. Realizing he's at his limit, Zeke decides to end the fight with one powerful move. He begins charging up a devastating attack. Liam watches cautiously, tracking Zeke's movements as Zeke charges forward with his fully powered punch. Before the punch even connects, it generates a visible shockwave, but Liam reacts quickly, dodging to the side and pushing Zeke's arm away. 3 energy rings burst out from the attack, leaving Zeke surprised. He mutters that Liam shouldn't even be able to see ether with his eyes. Liam grabs Zeke's arm and waist, spinning him around as he yells, ready to throw him. But before he can complete the move, Zeke takes advantage of the opening and drives his knee into the back of Liam's head. With Liam stunned, Zeke quickly locks onto his arm and transitions into a flying armbar, attempting a triangle choke. However, because of Liam's sheer size, he remains standing. Liam begins to cough and Zeke taunts him, saying that no matter how strong he is, he can't fight without oxygen in his brain. But Zeke's confidence falters as Liam starts landing powerful blows to Zeke's side, each hit causing sharp pain and making Zeke spit up blood. Despite the brutal exchange, neither of them is willing to back down. Zeke tightens his grip on Liam's throat, while Liam continues pummeling Zeke's side with relentless punches. Both fighters are filled with determination, unwilling to submit. The students watching are split. Some are terrified, while others, including a female student, seem to enjoy the intense fight. Even Panmark, the instructor, is too captivated to intervene. Eventually, Liam's hands go limp and he collapses, unconscious. Zeke, bloodied and barely standing, looks down at his fallen opponent. His side is soaked in blood from Liam's blows. The female student smirks, commenting that she expected nothing less from him, and hints that she's looking forward to challenging him herself. After the match, some time passes, and Decker approaches Zeke, asking if he's okay after such a brutal fight. Zeke assures him he's fine, but Decker requests to check his pulse. Zeke realizes Decker wants to see if he's awakened his aura and reluctantly agrees. Sticking out his hand, Zeke allows Decker to inspect him. As Decker focuses, he sends a blue aura coursing through Zeke's veins, and Zeke realizes that Decker is a blue knight. Zeke explains how aura levels work. Most trainees start as white swordsmen before the blessing rite. After awakening their aura and opening their dantian, they become yellow swordsmen. Knights are those who can freely control aura. Purple knights can reinforce their swords with aura, while blue knights can manifest an aura blade. The highest level, red knight, transcends the limits of aura mastery, a level Liam had reached before Zeke's regression. Zeke mentions an even rarer level, the Black Knight, but there are only a handful of those across the entire continent. Zeke wonders why someone as skilled as Decker, likely a Blue Knight, is acting as his babysitter. He shrugs it off, confident that Decker won't detect his ether, a power so rare that only 2 people in the world can use it. Decker, however, grows suspicious and releases Zeke's hand, asking if he's hiding something from him. In response, Zeke turns the tables, confronting Decker and asking if he is the one hiding something. Caught off guard by the unexpected question, Decker appears surprised, his expression betraying a moment of hesitation. Zeke then says he was just joking. Decker presses further, asking why Zeke has changed so suddenly. Zeke replies that Decker is asking the wrong question. Instead, he should ask why Zeke is only changing now. Decker bows and says he understands, informing Zeke that he has repaired the training room as requested. Zeke appreciates his efficiency and tells him to take some rest. Zeke thinks that if Decker was ordered to keep an eye on him, he might as well keep Decker close to gather information from him instead. He wonders who ordered Decker to watch him. He doesn't think it's anyone from his mother's side, so it must be one of his siblings. When Zeke reaches the training room, he's impressed by its size and notes that the household lives up to its reputation. He decides to check the system interface. Upon opening it, he notices that his slash skill is now proficient, possibly because he used it recently. He realizes that skills activate naturally based on his actions and wonders if new skills he learns will also be added automatically. He questions the difference between a skill and a class skill, since they seem to activate similarly. The Draconian skill also seems suspicious to him, as he doesn't understand what points refer to. He clicks on karma points and learns that they can be earned by killing monsters. He notes that there are plenty of monsters in dungeons, but he needs to be at least a purple knight to enter them. He's also curious about why he regressed to the past and what this system truly is. Thinking that overanalyzing won't help, he decides to focus on training. He picks up a sword, resolving to use anything that helps him get stronger, even if it means exploiting the system or others in the Draker household. He explains that there are two known powers in the world, the aura of the knights and the mana of the mages. Knights reinforce their aura in dungeons, and mages harness mana through circles. These two powers are opposites. If you awaken one, you cannot awaken the other. However, he was unable to awaken either a dantian or a circle for mana. Abandoned by his family, he met his master during his wandering days. His master taught him many things, but the most useful was the healing in Aether Hall. Through the Aether Hall, developed by his master, he could manipulate the energy of nature. Only he and his master are Aether users in the entire world. He practices diligently, giving his all. After a few hours, his hands are bleeding and he feels like he's about to collapse, thinking it's acceptable to stop. But then his class skill healing activates, along with vigor recovery, and his entire body begins to repair itself from the training. He explains that healing is a very rare skill he didn't know existed before meeting his master. If he used it in front of others, they would see him as an anomaly, which is why he couldn't use it during his fight against Liam. He had to heal himself quickly after returning to his room. Now that he's recovered, he continues training again. This is why healing is so powerful. Train, heal, repeat. As it gets dark, he sighs, realizing it's already dinner time. He wonders what to say to Decker, as he has left marks all over the training area. The scene then shifts to a week later at the Cradle cafeteria. Some people are gossiping about how much Zeke has changed, suggesting he might have learned dark magic. Other students hope he continues to humble the top students. In a separate room in the cafeteria, there's a lavish feast. Someone is enjoying the food, eating steak, while others have less luxurious meals. It's his cousin, Raina Turin, who was watching his fight with Liam. There are other people there as well. One student mentions that even if they don't have an appetite, they should eat to have energy for the upcoming swordsmanship duel. This student's name is Owen, and he's talking to Leon, who asks if Owen is trying to irritate him. Owen says he was just being considerate, but guesses that Leon's inferiority complex is causing issues. Leon becomes angry and slams the table, causing Raina to drop her steak. She glares at him for interrupting her meal. Leon grows nervous. Jackin is there too, asking what their plan is to deal with Zeke. Owen remarks that while Zeke's fight was intense and impressive, he'll be lacking in swordsmanship, questioning what Zeke can do when he can barely hold up his sword. Leon tries to agree, saying that Zeke had to get a custom sword because the regular ones were too heavy. He insists it doesn't make sense for him to lose to someone so inferior, and is sure they saw that Zeke only won by luck. Raina seems annoyed by his excuses, and Leon can't even lift his head to look at her. She tells him that if he truly believes that, then he has no right to be a knight of the Draker household, and she walks away from the table. Zeke explained, about the upcoming sword duel, unlike Pancration, this upcoming event used real swords, which was why it caused most of the incidents within the Cradle. He added that a month after the final exams, the Blessing Rite would take place, an event where Drakers awaken their auras. Hanmark called Zeke to step forward. As Zeke carried a comically oversized sword on his shoulder, the crowd erupted in laughter. They teased him, joking that he must be trying to look stronger than he actually was. Amid the laughter, Raina called out to Zeke from the other side of the platform. When Zeke turned to look, he saw her confidently walking toward him. Meeting in the middle, Raina told him she had specifically chosen him as her opponent. Zeke responded that it was a good choice and that he was happy to accept her challenge. Raina noted how effortlessly Zeke was lifting his massive claymore, and remarked that he didn't seem like the same Zeke she had once known, the one who could barely hold a sword. She wondered aloud if his growth was due to his larger stature, observing that his aura now seemed intimidating. However, she quickly dismissed her thoughts, reminding herself to stay focused before their duel. Zeke admitted that facing the Lightning Knight made him nervous, but he promised to do his best, as always. He recalled that Raina, known as the Lightning Knight, had earned her title during the Continental Wars. She was regarded as one of the most talented Drakers of her generation, having awakened her aura years ago, even before undergoing the Blessing Rite. However, she had refrained from using her aura in the Cradle, opting to focus on perfecting her fundamentals instead. Hanmark signaled the start of the duel, and Reina immediately lunged with a thrust. Zeke parried her first strike, but she quickly shifted her position and charged again, pressing her advantage. This time, Zeke couldn't parry. He had to block the attack with his sword, which sent him skidding across the arena. He managed to stop his momentum by leaning forward, but realized that Reina was even stronger than he had expected. Still, he decided, she wasn't unbeatable. As Reina moved in for another attack, the spectators shouted that she needed to stop toying with him. Jackson, another cadet, scoffed, wondering aloud if Zeke was foolish enough to believe Reina was holding back. Now familiar with her style, Zeke began deflecting her strikes with increasing precision. Reina acknowledged that while Zeke's defenses had narrow gaps, his timing and movements made it feel as if he were training her rather than dueling. Their swords clashed again, sending sparks flying, but this time Reina pulled back, clearly winded. Zeke sighed and commented to himself that this was the way the Lightning Knight had always fought, honest and deliberate, as expected from someone obsessed with mastering the basics. However, he concluded that her focus on fundamentals was holding her back, and he resolved to help her break out of her shell. Lowering his stance, Zeke prepared for his next move. Reina observed him cautiously, guessing that he intended to close the gap between them. She reminded herself of her speed advantage and braced herself to react. But while she was lost in thought, Zeke had already closed the distance. He swung his sword downward, forcing her to step aside. She assured herself that as long as there was space between them, she could anticipate his moves. Zeke then began digging into the arena with his sword, creating a wide swipe that sent debris flying toward Reina. As expected, she backpedaled to avoid the attack, but the debris struck her face, catching her off guard. When she regained focus, she realized too late that Zeke had already closed the gap again. He swung his sword directly toward her throat, and she thought the duel was over. However, instead of landing the final blow, Zeke's sword flew through the air and landed far behind him. A faint blue aura surrounded Reina, and the crowd erupted in praise, impressed that she had defeated Zeke without even using her aura. But Handmark, observing closely, revealed that Reina had used the smallest amount of aura, so faint it was barely noticeable. Despite her strict adherence to the promise of not using aura in the cradle, Zeke had managed to force her to break her own rule. Zeke asked Reina what she was doing as she knelt on the ground, clearly furious with herself. Without waiting for an answer, he declared that their duel wasn't over. Then, in a move no one saw coming, he abandoned his sword and landed a fist straight to her throat. The crowd collectively gasped as Reina coughed up blood and collapsed to her knees. Leon immediately shouted in outrage, reminding everyone that this was supposed to be a sword duel and accusing Zeke of foul play. The crowd wasn't having it. They piled on Leon, pointing out that a true knight never abandons their sword and insisting that Reina had already won. Zeke, unfazed by their shaming, stood tall. Because, in his mind, a win was still a win. Reina, struggling to her feet, met Zeke's gaze. He asked if she wanted to continue, but Reina, between labored breaths, refused to back down. She claimed he only managed to land a hit because she let her guard down. Realizing how ridiculous that sounded, she stopped mid-sentence, conceding that if Zeke had used a dagger instead of his bare fist, she'd probably be dead. Swallowing her pride, she admitted defeat. The crowd was stunned. Just weeks ago, Zeke was widely considered the bottom of the barrel, a nobody. Yet here he was, victorious against one of the most talented prodigies among the noble houses. Owen and the others couldn't believe their eyes. The scene shifted to a castle overshadowing a city in flames. Below, knights were tossing bodies into a pit already overflowing with corpses. Inside the castle, a man named William stormed into an office, splattered with blood, incredulously announcing that Zeke had defeated Reina. Sitting calmly amidst the chaos, Abel sipped tea and dismissed William's dramatics, reminding him that he was always too serious. Changing the subject, Abel asked how much time remained until the blessing rite. William replied that they had until the next full moon. Abel stood up, casually stepping over bloodstains, and announced that this was the perfect moment to pay the Draker family a visit. William, concerned, asked if Abel planned to go alone. Abel, intrigued by Zeke's unexpected victory, said his curiosity had been piqued and he wanted to see firsthand what kind of awakening their youngest might undergo. Back in the cradle, a month passed, and on the day of the blessing rite, Zeke sighed to himself, wondering how he had managed to become a red knight in his previous life with such a shitty body. Opening his status window, Zeke reviewed his progress. Many of his skills had leveled up, with one even reaching the expert rank. However, his slash skill stubbornly remained at the beginner level. Zeke explained that once a skill surpassed the expert level, the mastery reset when it ranked up. He also noted that he'd managed to improve his mastery of swift steps, a skill he had gained during his duel with Reina. As he reviewed his progress, Decker approached and informed him they would be leaving in 2 hours. Zeke nodded, telling him to get everything ready. 2 hours later, Zeke climbed into a carriage alongside Decker, commenting that it had been a while since he'd visited the main estate. The Draker family's estate, known as the Dragon's Nest Lair, was situated within the Duchy of Troy. The estate wasn't just any home. It was a storied place where the legend of the Dragonslayer began. Although the Draker family's main residence was located at the Four Seasons Fortress in Middleland, tradition dictated that the blessing rite be held at the Dragon's Nest. The carriage came to a halt, and as Zeke stepped out, the imposing sight of the Dragon's Nest Lair loomed before him. Enmark bellowed, ordering the cadets to stand at attention. Zeke scanned the room and suddenly realized that most of the onlookers were big names, people you'd typically see in the headlines. He figured his family had sent spies too, likely hoping to keep tabs on him. Not that it mattered though. He was convinced they'd lose interest the moment he inevitably failed his awakening. His annoyance deepened as he spotted a familiar face in the crowd. Clenching his fists, he muttered under his breath, wondering what that guy was doing here. Nearby, Abel greeted someone casually, who asked if he was scouting any of the cadets. Abel replied that he wasn't there to scout. He had a more personal reason. His adorable younger brother was among the cadets, and that brother was none other than Zeke. Zeke locked eyes with Abel, but instead of awe, his gaze was filled with disdain. He thought the nickname Lion's Blade was far too noble. Butchering Knight would have been more accurate. He quickly looked away, telling himself to calm down, since there was nothing he could do about it now. In his past life, Abel would never have shown up for the blessing rite, and Zeke couldn't help but wonder if his actions had somehow altered the future. He glanced at his scarred hands, the evidence of his hard work, and decided that if things had changed, this might actually be a good opportunity. Handmark's booming voice snapped him out of his thoughts, announcing the start of the blessing rite and calling Aaron forward. Aaron stepped up, rolling back his sleeve before plunging his hand into the water near the chalice. As blood dripped into the pool, a blue aura began to swirl around him, even enveloping the knight statue beside him. Zeke noted that the aura would flow into Aaron's dantian, expanding it and creating a vortex that spread through his body. As the ceremony continued, Handmark called up the next cadet. Zeke explained that some rare cases awaken not only their aura, but also a powerful trait of the Dragonslayer lineage called mana inhibition. Right on cue, the lights flickered before turning a deep red. The onlookers murmured in surprise as Zeke calmly remarked that those with mana inhibition were as strong as yellow knights. Some even rivaled the red and black knights and underwent what was known as pure blood awakening. The source of the phenomenon was revealed to be Reina. Handmark quickly called for special gloves, as Zeke explained that mana inhibition required them to live a normal life. Those who demonstrated a pure blood awakening were formally recognized as Drakers and granted the full support of the family, a package deal that came with unimaginable privileges. One by one, the cadets underwent their awakenings until finally all eyes turned to Zeke. The spectators buzzed with excitement, speculating about what kind of awakening he'd have. Some were convinced it would be another pure blood awakening, given his recent victory over Reina. As Zeke stepped up to the chalice, memories of his previous life came flooding back. The last time he had stood there, it had been a humiliating experience. He hadn't awakened, and the mocking stares of those around him had burned into his mind. But this time, things were different. He had worked hard, gained new abilities, and most importantly, refused to surrender. Determined, Zeke plunged his hand into the water. Blood spilled into the chalice, and the statue beside him began to stir. But then, without warning, it stopped. Confused murmurs spread through the crowd as they wondered what had gone wrong. Even Abel watched in silence as Zeke's frustration boiled over. He muttered bitterly to himself that he'd known nothing would change and blamed Abel for his misplaced confidence. The crowd started gossiping, speculating that Zeke might have failed his awakening. Some dismissed his victory over Reina as a fluke, while others doubted his legitimacy as a Draker. Zeke scoffed, thinking how predictable their reactions were. It didn't matter though. There were plenty of ways to grow stronger without relying on an awakening. Suddenly, his status window appeared, apologizing for a delay in processing. Zeke blinked, puzzled as it announced that missing information had been updated and his class had been unlocked. The message revealed that his talent as a healer had been identified and confirmed, a revelation that left Zeke momentarily stunned. As the red lights from Reina's awakening reappeared, This time from the statue, the crowd gasped. They declared it another pure blood awakening, but instead of starting with a blue aura, Zeke's was red, a rarity. From Zeke's perspective, however, he noticed a golden hue emanating from the statue's sword. The status window continued, explaining that Zeke's awakening had unlocked a unique class called the Immortal, a combination of the talents of a healer and the fighter's bloodline. Abel remained stoic, showing no reaction, while Zeke stood in stunned silence, wondering what on earth it all meant. The crowd is buzzing with confusion about Zeke's golden light. Some are saying it can't be a pure-blooded awakening anymore, while others think the red hue confirms it must be. Then someone suggests the sword statue might be broken because the mana lamps are working fine, and without mana inhibition, it doesn't add up. Basically, no one has a clue what's going on. Abel, always ready to take charge, starts clapping and tells everyone to stop being so serious. He declares that having 2 pure blood awakenings in one batch is a blessing worth celebrating. Like obedient puppies, everyone immediately starts clapping along, pretending they're thrilled. Abel shouts at Panmark to get gloves for the newest member, and Panmark scrambles to obey. When Zeke is handed the gloves, he casually comments on how heavy they are and starts to walk off. As Zeke leaves, Abel watches him with a smirk, and Zeke can practically feel the manipulation coming off him. He has no intention of getting involved with Abel's schemes, but knows he can't avoid this mess entirely. Panmark announces the blessing rite is officially over and invites everyone to a party to celebrate. Zeke, uninterested, decides to slip away and find the training room instead. Abel stops him, calling out and congratulating him on his pure blood awakening. He sticks out his hand for a handshake, but Zeke isn't thrilled. In his head, he's wondering why this guy wants to shake hands so badly. He knows refusing would reveal his hostility, so he reluctantly goes to play along. Then, a sudden flashback of a brutal massacre hits him, and he freezes. His hand drops back to his side, and he refuses the handshake. Abel, caught off guard, laughs it off, saying it's awkward but no big deal. Zeke, in his head, is done with the fake niceties and thinking there's no way he can shake hands with someone like Abel. Abel pats his shoulder instead and says they'll see each other again before walking off. Zeke, pissed, mutters under his breath that they definitely will, but it won't end well. At the party, everyone is hyped up over the 2 new purebloods. Zeke's golden light is the main topic, with people saying it was so shocking they thought it might have been a failed awakening at first. While they're all chatting, Zeke has slipped away, taking off his gloves and sighing in relief after feeling suffocated. He starts thinking about how strange his situation is. Pure blood awakenings usually come with mana inhibition, the ability to shut down mana around them, essentially opposing dragon magic. Without it, things should have gone haywire the moment he removed the gloves. He opens his status window and notices that instead of mana inhibition, he has a skill called mana reflection. It's an active skill that creates a distortion field to nullify nearby mana, which explains why the lamps didn't react. Realizing his class has changed, Zeke thinks back to how he was a rare healer before the blessing rite. Now, he's listed as a unique immortal, something he's never heard of. He recalls how most of the others had basic awakenings with blue auras, and only Reyna had a pure blood awakening before him. His, however, started red and turned gold, which has everyone baffled. He remembers the earlier system glitch, where the bronze statue lost critical information. It clicks for him. The statue doesn't just determine if someone has awakened, it identifies their class. The red light and golden glow were the system struggling to process his unique classification. The red light from Zeke's awakening wasn't some legendary pureblood signal like everyone thought. It turns out it's an ancient relic glitch. The bronze statue, a relic from way before Terrakin, the founder of the Drakers, was originally designed to classify classes, back when that was a thing. Now, it's just used to check if someone has awakened the red light. That was actually a rare class indicator, but everyone's been clueless, calling it pure-blooded awakening instead. Zeke sighs, thinking the family heads are absolute clowns for never catching this. Then he remembers his karma points. He wonders if they're a bonus from the awakening ritual and decides to spend them. Opening the Draconian skill menu, he sees skills like Dragon Eyes, Might of the Dragon, and Devour. Dragon Eyes gives detailed info on people. Might of the Dragon makes everyone around him bow to his aura. And Devour is, well, for stuffing his face like a dragon-sized pig. Zeke debates for a bit, but he's not stupid. He opts for Dragon Eyes and Might of the Dragon, skipping Devour because, let's face it, he's not about to waste points on a skill that screams, I eat everything. After unlocking the skills, he decides Might of the Dragon is too risky to use in public and activates Dragon Eyes instead. His eyes transform into glowing dragon eyes and a golden aura radiates around him. Zeke runs into breathing room later. At first, he's unimpressed, muttering that the detailed information it promised seems like a ripoff. But then he notices the statue in the garden, miles away. Now looks like it's right in front of him. He bursts out laughing, realizing this skill is like having telescopic vision on steroids. Suddenly, a status window pops up, asking if he wants detailed info on the statue. Curious, he clicks yes, and instantly, more windows flood his vision, breaking down every object in the room, how they were made, and probably what they had for breakfast. It's so overwhelming that Zeke's head starts pounding, and he nearly collapses into a chair. He figures if all draconian skills are this extra, he might not survive using them often. But then his class skills kick in, specifically healing factor and vigor recovery, refreshing him in seconds. Zeke didn't even mean to use them, but hey, he's not complaining. He notices something else wild. His class skills have all been converted into passive abilities, and their levels have jumped by 1. Healing factor, for example, repairs his body automatically. He grins, calling it low-key broken. Healing magic is usually a limited, energy-draining pain in the ass, but healing factor is infinite. Naturally, Zeke decides to test it. He grabs a knife, slices his arm open like he's auditioning for a metal band, and watches as his skin repairs itself instantly without even a scar left behind. Zeke decides the Academy's 5-year program is way too slow for someone like him. With his insane skills, he figures he'll finish it in 2 years and still have time to flex on everyone. Speaking of which, we find out that the Drakkar Academy is the top knight training school on the continent, located in the prestigious Duchy of Troy. It's so elite that aspiring knights would literally give an arm or a leg to get in. The semester kicks off with thousands of new students flooding the courtyard, laughing and enjoying their first day. Zeke takes a moment to size them up, noting how the high-ranking students look polished and trained, practically like adults, but compared to the elite warriors raised from the cradle, like himself, they're still second-grade. Among the crowd are kids from the so-called great families, who already seem to have marked their territory. These are the branch families propping up the transcendent Drakkar family, and the top 3 with the most clout are the Turin family, Reyna's crew, the Zimmons family, Owen's gang, and Jackin's family. Even their kids are acting like royalty, strutting around with entourages in tow. Zeke chuckles, finding their antics amusing, but ultimately none of his business. He moves on, heading to the high-class dormitory, Platinum Mansion. He smirks, saying, "It's nice being purebred." This place is decked out with all the bells and whistles, training halls, libraries, and facilities most students can only dream of. Even the elite kids from the cradle can't waltz in here without special access. As a pure-blooded awakener, Zeke gets the ultimate perk, his own platinum floor, an entire private level just for him. A maid greets Zeke at the entrance, offering to escort him to his floor. As it turns out, there's a full staff of maids and butlers waiting to serve him. Zeke sighs, saying it's overkill, even for someone with his status. A butler informs him that Decker is waiting in his room. When Zeke enters, Decker is there to deliver a package, a shiny new pair of gloves. Zeke tries them on immediately, noting how much better they feel than his old ones. He's pleased, and Decker is relieved that he likes them. Feeling fancy with his new gear, Zeke jokes about needing a new sword to match and asks for Decker's opinion. Decker agrees wholeheartedly, pointing out that the Duchy of Troy, with its proximity to Giant's Mountain, is known for excellent iron and master craftsmen. It's practically a tradition for Academy students to start with a Trojan weapon. Decker offers to find a skilled smith, but Zeke already has someone in mind. He hands Decker a note with the name Galleon Halbert. Decker hasn't heard of this smith, but agrees to follow orders. He also reminds Zeke that classes start tomorrow and nudges him to review the documents he prepared. Zeke grumbles about Decker's nagging, but gets to work. Later, as Zeke flips through the documents, he appreciates how the Platinum Floor's isolation gives him the freedom to focus on honing his draconian skills without interruptions. Just as he's getting comfortable, there's a knock at the door. A woman enters, apologizing and saying that Floormaster Reyna has sent him a dinner invitation. Zeke is surprised but agrees to go. When he arrives on the roof, Zeke spots Reyna surrounded by a group of guys. He snickers, calling them a cute little southern cartel. Reyna greets him warmly, explaining that her family's people are a bit eccentric. She dismisses the group and apologizes for the scene. Zeke takes a seat, thanking her for her concern. Reyna smiles and says she wants to talk business, but only after the meal. Zeke watches Reyna, calling her out for finally living up to her nickname, the Lightning Knight. He notices she's using her lower abdomen to control her aura, hinting that she's aiming for the prestigious title of Purple Knight. But despite her potential, he can't help but sigh, wondering why her swordsmanship feels so stagnant. Such a waste, he mutters. Fast forward to dinner. After demolishing 4 plates of food, Zeke nervously laughs, admitting he's a big eater but completely outclassed by Reina, who scarfed down double what he managed. Once they're both done, Reina cuts to the chase, telling Zeke to accept her Turin family's support. Zeke immediately raises an eyebrow and reminds her that they're both pure-blooded awakeners. Reina clarifies, saying he's missing the bigger picture. Sure, pure-blooded awakeners get perks, like the exclusive platinum floor, but that's about it. The Academy doesn't hand out personal instructors or centuries of knowledge on a silver platter. Without a support family, no matter how talented he is, he'll fall behind. To drive the point home, she brings up Abel, the youngest White Knight in history, and now the current Black Knight. Even he gets backing from his maternal family, the Zimmons, Owen's clan. Reina also drops a bomb. Her patriarch told her Zeke isn't receiving any support from his maternal family. She insists he needs to accept her family's help. Zeke, without hesitation, waves her off with a firm no. Reina, visibly confused, asks why he's rejecting such a generous offer. Zeke explains it's not about the deal itself. He says he doesn't need more than what he already has as a pure-blooded awakener, but since she treated him to a good meal, he offers her a bit of advice instead. He points out that her sword has too much brute strength behind it, likely because she's overly concerned with impressing the men around her. To prove his point, Zeke pushes against a nearby tree, and all the leaves fall instantly. He then tells her to focus on her natural strength, her fluidity. Instead of meeting attacks head-on, she should use her flexible movements to deflect her opponent's attacks and strike with precision. He assures her this approach will make her exponentially stronger. After dropping this gem of wisdom, Zeke thanks her for dinner and leaves. As he walks away, Reina's hand trembles. She reflects on his words, thinking about her family's legacy as heralds of strength. She realizes she's been too obsessed with living up to her family name, which has unintentionally shaped her rigid sword style. When she was younger, everyone praised her as a prodigy, but no one ever gave her meaningful advice. Until Zeke. She notices one of the fallen leaves in her hand and is shocked to see it's been cut cleanly. In that moment, she starts to wonder, who exactly is this guy? Zeke is out for a peaceful walk, thinking about how insanely overpowered his new class skills are. Despite staying up all night training, he feels totally fine, thanks to his infinite stamina skill. It's so broken that Zeke casually compares his past life, where this place felt like hell, to now, where it's basically heaven. Life's good when you're a pure-blooded awakener. As he strolls, 2 people spot him and call out. Zeke turns to see Owen, the 3rd son of the Zimmons family, one of the big shot families. Zeke remembers Owen as the guy who bullied him while pretending to be all innocent. Owen says he's glad Zeke made it to the special class and mentions the dinner invitation he sent. Zeke doesn't buy the fake friendly act and wonders why Owen suddenly cares. Owen asks why Zeke didn't respond to the letter. Zeke laughs and says, "You seriously think I reply to every little thing people ask?" That's funny. Before Owen can say more, his henchman stomps forward, clearly trying to look intimidating. This towering guy who looks like he lives at the gym starts laughing and mocking Zeke. Turns out he's Durbin Roswell, and he calls himself Durbin the Mighty. Zeke bursts out laughing at the nickname. "You're a cadet who isn't even a knight yet, and you've already given yourself a nickname? That's hilarious," Zeke says, clearly unimpressed. Durbin, clearly not a fan of being laughed at, attacks Zeke. Zeke blocks it, but gets knocked back. Dusting himself off, he sighs. Okay, so the high rankers know basic aura manipulation. Durbin doesn't get much time to celebrate though. Zeke dashes forward faster than Durbin can react, lands a clean punch to his stomach and sends him flying. Durbin hits the ground coughing up blood. Zeke looks down at him and says, "What a joke." Then he turns to Owen. "All right, who's next? Go ahead and pick up your trash." Owen, instead of fighting, walks towards Zeke with a smug grin. "You sure love showing off," he says before turning and walking away. Zeke watches him leave and mutters, "Third-rate villain." Zeke explains the academy setup. There's the normal class, where kids who lack talent are taught to grind their way to success with grueling schedules. Then there's the special class, supposedly for the elites, where students get to chill and pick their subjects. But to Zeke, it's just a fancy name for Cradle Kids Reloaded. He's seriously questioning why it's even called special. Before he can roll his eyes too hard, a teacher tells everyone to shut up because someone important is about to show up. Enter Chief Dean Howard Draker, a supposed war hero who stopped the Eastern Empire's invasion 20 years ago. The guy's hyped as a genius, but Zeke knows better. Turns out, Howard survived by leaking info to the enemy and letting them self-destruct. Zeke's not impressed and mutters something about how this guy's the reason he got kicked out of the academy. Let's just say Zeke's got a grudge. After a brief internal rant about his miserable post-acid me life, slave traders, cartels, you name it, Zeke hears the teacher announce it's time for dragon slaying basics. Zeke groans. In his last life, this took him 2 years to master because he couldn't use aura. Now, he's hoping for an easier ride. Then Andre Draker walks in, the guy running the class. He's young, wearing the prestigious Draker uniform and oozing "I'm better than you" energy. The cadets whisper about how he's some once-in-a-century genius who graduated early and even topped Valhalla. Zeke knows him well. He's not even a pure-blooded awakener, but he's got the Draker name because he's that good. Oh, and he's also a total hard-ass. Andre immediately shuts the class up with a wave of bloodlust that says, "Mess with me and I'll ruin your life." He orders everyone to draw their swords, but when he spots Zeke's oversized blade, he can't help but ask, "What the hell is that?" Zeke, always the show-off, pulls out the sword with a bit of flair, even tossing in some spins. "This," he says smugly, "is my sword." Andre looks like he's about to explode and orders Zeke to step into the arena. "Swords are supposed to match your body, not your ego," he snaps. Zeke knew this was coming but figured he might as well make it entertaining. He pulls out his ridiculously big sword and smirks at Andre, telling him, "This is the one that'll take you down." Andre's clearly not amused and responds by unleashing some serious bloodlust. But Zeke's mental skills are so broken that he doesn't even flinch. Andre draws his glowing rose aura blade and offers Zeke a deal. If Zeke can land a hit, not only will he skip punishment, but he'll also get out of dragon slaying class. Zeke can't believe his luck. "Free pass?" "Bet," he says, already scheming to graze Andre's clothes for an easy win. But he also knows Abel is watching, and showing off too much might backfire. With that, Zeke charges straight for Andre's neck. Andre blocks like it's nothing, and Zeke backs off, saying, "Yep, that's about what I expected from a Blue Knight." Sparks fly as Zeke zips around, trying every trick in the book, but Andre doesn't even move. He just blocks everything, looking bored. The crowd of cadets is losing their minds. 30 minutes in, and Zeke hasn't landed a single hit. Andre's hand starts shaking slightly, and Zeke notices. "What's the deal, man? Did you skip leg day or something?" he teases. Andre tightens his grip on his sword, but Zeke keeps poking fun. "Your fancy aura cultivation is draining you, huh? It's like holding your breath all day. No wonder you're tired." Andre finally swipes at Zeke, sending him flying backward. Zeke dusts himself off and mutters, "Losing like this? Nah, that's not happening." He decides to push Andre harder and forces him to react on instinct. With a burst of speed, Zeke activates swift steps and starts zooming around the arena, so fast it's hard to keep track. Andre blinks, trying to follow Zeke's movements. This can't be real, he thinks. A cadet shouldn't be this fast. Meanwhile, Zeke is bouncing around like he's got springs in his shoes, looking for just the right moment to strike. Zeke activates critical strikes, aiming right above Andre's head, while Andre's brain is still short-circuiting over how a cadet knows swift steps. Andre turns, locking eyes with Zeke, and for the first time, he feels like he's in real danger. Suddenly, blue aura wraps around Andre's feet as he backpedals, raising his sword to counter. Andre pulls out the big guns, literally, using Sky Slice, the first move from the dragon-slaying arts. His blade glows with intense energy as he swings it down toward Zeke. Zeke, smiling like he's playing with a cheat code, raises his own sword to block. The clash sends Zeke flying, his sword now dented and ready to snap. Zeke groans, muttering, "That hurt like hell," as his healing factor kicks in. He drops his sword and theatrically collapses, letting everyone think he's done. Andre, realizing he went way too far on a student, sheathes his blade and walks away. Frustrated, he announces that Zeke doesn't need to attend class anymore. He even asks the other cadets if anyone else wants to be exempt. Nobody speaks up. Shocker. And Andre cranks up his bloodlust, daring anyone to step forward. Zeke wakes up in the hospital later, smirking about his Oscar-winning performance. He didn't even graze Andre's clothes, but he got what he wanted. Andre broke his no-aura promise, got disciplined, and Zeke scored himself some free time. Total win-win. Reflecting on the fight, Zeke admits, Andre's Sky Slice was basic, but from a Blue Knight, it was like getting hit by a truck. Still, Zeke's limitless stamina and healing gave him the edge, but he knows this isn't enough. He needs power so absolute, no one can ever control him. Just as Zeke is deep in thought, a drunk guy stumbles over and starts rambling. The man squints at Zeke, asking if he's Arthur's youngest kid. Zeke's like, who's this hobo and why does he reek of booze? But the guy doesn't smell like alcohol, which throws Zeke off even more. The man keeps ranting, calling Arthur an arrogant jerk and asking how Zeke healed earlier. Zeke plays dumb, but the drunk guy isn't buying it. He says, why the charade? You healed from an internal wound instantly. Zeke's mental block skill activates, reminding him to stay cool. No way this dude knows about my healing, he thinks. Zeke brushes it off, saying he has no idea what the man is talking about. The guy smirks, calling Zeke's bluff. Without warning, he swings his hand toward Zeke's head, almost decapitating him without even using a weapon. Zeke's instincts scream, kill or be killed! Grabbing the bed sheets, he throws them at the guy to block his vision. The man dodges easily but compliments Zeke's quick thinking, saying, you've got some tricks, kid. Zeke's adrenaline spikes as he realizes this guy is no joke. He goes all in, using swift steps, precise stab, and critical strike in one combo. But the drunk dude doesn't even flinch. He grabs Zeke's blade with his bare hand like it's no big deal. That's when Zeke knows he's in serious trouble. The man casually comments on Zeke's adaptability, saying it's almost like he's a mercenary. He stares Zeke down with a dangerous glint in his eye.